Secret. The sleaze and the dilapidation of the Tenderloin may be shocking to some people, but the neighborhood is actually home to some 5,000 youngsters who prove remarkably able to adapt and even to rise above it. In tonight's Monday report, you'll meet some of these kids as Greg Lyon begins a three-part report on the children of the Tenderloin. But first, we have a warning. Some of the pictures you are about to see might be offensive, and we advise you to use your discretion.
It is as lonely as any place in the city in the dark adult hours when almost anything is for sale except hope. But as morning slips into 100 sleeping doorways, as garbage trucks take away some of what has been cast off during the night, the tired hotels and apartments of San Francisco's Tenderloin stir to a sound they were never built to hear. In the last 8 years, between 5,000 and 6,000 children have moved into the most notorious 30 blocks of the city, an area that has not one school, not a single playground, but 37 porno stores, sex clubs, and massage parlors.
No, this isn't a drug raid, okay? You have nothing to worry about.
Some live in buildings that are known as shooting galleries because of the drug traffic they support. Almost all live in apartments that were designed at best for a single adult.
You live in here? Can we show these guys how you're sleeping in?
Yes, sure.
They just sleep in the closet there.
The children of the Tenderloin are refugees. Some, like these families, from war in Indochina. Others, refugees in their own country, finding shelter the only place they can.
How do you feel about raising your kids down here?
I hate it. I mean, I'm just down here for emergency housing until I get them to something nice.
Really?
Whatever brings the adults here, the children have to follow. And like it or not, these streets are home. Joe Stevenson came from New Jersey. He's lived in the Tenderloin for 4 years, time enough to have seen it all. And at 16, he's old enough to say how it feels.
There's too much of everything going on here. In this little space, it's just too much of everything. There's not enough housing, too many people, not enough money, too much crime, not enough fun.
Hey, that's the box, the strikeout box.
This is as close as the neighborhood comes to a playing field, a parking lot that is only empty after 4 and on weekends, where the outfielder plays on the far side of Turk Street.
It's really not a place for kids to hang out, but they can't just go to a playground. It's not finished yet. I don't know if it's going to be finished, but where are they going to go?
The children go where they can, most often to the streets, the younger ones staying close to their apartment doors in case the streets turn mean. As they play, they watch what goes on around them. Sometimes it's as harmless as a bag lady. Often what they see is something much more disturbing. In the Tenderloin, children of 9 call the coroner's truck the meat wagon. In these close quarters, many like Joe Stevenson have seen death firsthand.
As we were coming up, I saw his body laying on the grass, and I saw, a gun right next to his body, and his hat and his head split open and things like that. And it was an ugly scene. But then again, there are a lot of ugly scenes in the Tenderloin. If I had kids, I wouldn't want to raise them here. It's more psychological than it is physical. It's like, since you're down here around the drugs, the crime, stuff like that, you just adapt to it. It's interesting. It really is.
How children adapt to the Tenderloin is more than just interesting to their parents. For many, like Joe's mother, Bee, it is frightening. From her job as a cashier at a parking lot, Bee Stevenson sees the worst of the Tenderloin pass by every day. And to her, the difference between what the streets would teach and what children learn is the family.
You cannot raise a child if you're standing on a street corner from sunup to sundown, because you're not showing them anything. You cannot give your children any hope for continued life unless you show them what hope is all about.
She's told me for a long time, you know, how to live, you know, right and wrong, good and bad, not to lie. And it's paid off because I don't steal. And I haven't been to juvenile, and I don't intend to go.
For B. Stevenson, as for many parents, just seeing your child come out whole is reward in itself.
He doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, and he doesn't sell anything on street corners, which is comparatively the best you can hope for coming up in an environment where everybody is doing it.
In the Tenderloin, I'm Greg Lyon, News Center 4.
Our Target 4 report on the children of the Tenderloin continues tomorrow. We'll meet some of the parents of the Tenderloin and learn the special demands that neighborhood makes on them. And by the way, Target 4's Lou DeAria shot and edited this fine report.
Powerful stuff. Between 5,000 and 6,000 children are growing up in the most notorious 30 blocks of San Francisco, an area called the Tenderloin. Last night, Target 4 reporter Greg Lyon showed us what some of those children have to face. Tonight, in part 2 of his report, we see the situation through the eyes of their parents.
It's hard. It's difficulty, and it's it's the type of life that, you know, you just have to be down here, you know, and to see.
Her name is Bahia Shendoa, known in the neighborhood as Queenie. At 6 o'clock in the morning, she finishes her shift at St. Anthony's Drop-In Center for Women and heads for home.
I look at myself, sometimes I can feel sorry for myself, you know, but then I can also, at the same time, I can balance it off, you know, and say, hey, you're doing good. God blessing you to be 28 years old, you know, and there's a lot of people that's 28 that don't have the freedom, you know.
7 in the morning, when Leon Griffin starts his workday, is perhaps the only quiet hour on the Tenderloin's most notorious street corner, the corner of Turk and Taylor. Leon will sweep these streets as part of the city's Work for Welfare program. Queenie lives in a studio apartment with her 6-month-old daughter, Aisha, her son, Mustafa, who's 2.5, her husband, Omar, and his daughter, Olabisi. Outside, the first wave of school children waits for the bus. On Ellis Street, Michelle Lefebvre, formerly of Paris, now of the Tenderloin, makes her daily stop for the children to play with her poodle, the Goody. At the corner of Eddie and Jones, a man known on the street as Bobby gets ready to face another day.
Yes, could I get an officer out here, please? We're having some problems out someone that live in the building.
Another day in the Tenderloin often means another day of conflict. On this one, before the children are even off to school, Omar and Queenie get into an argument with a neighbor. Both sides call police.
It's going to compound an already bad situation if we have another problem like this.
It is conflict like this, or the constant potential for it, that more than anything else makes families hate their lives in the Tenderloin.
It's a living hell. That's what it's just like we was just, if anybody ever say, you know, what is hell? You can tell them by living in the Tenderloin.
This is flip.
Well, all these boys, I don't know.
Leon Griffin lives with his wife and 3 stepchildren in 2 rundown rooms on Turk Street.
Basically, just keep faith in God, you know. When you boil it all down, you don't have the money and you don't have, you know, a lot of things that you want. So you just, if you don't have all that, you basically just turn to God.
But not even God can provide privacy in 2 open rooms, can shield children from concerns that more properly belong to adults. And that worries Leon.
When a kid got to listen to his parents, I'm not just basically talking about my kids. I mean, any kid that have to listen to his parents talking about the bills, it's like, it's a piece of weight You know, and if that kid don't have some kind of outlet, how can he get the weight off of it?
With no place to go, no front yard or backyard, no park or playground, Leon turns to Turk Street. On sunny afternoons, you'll find him there, playing ball with his kids. For Leon, as for many families, the Tenderloin has only one thing to recommend it, as Bradford Paul of the North of Market Coalition explains.
The rents are not cheap here, but it's still the cheapest housing left in the city, and you don't have to come up with first and last month's rent to move in some cases.
For people short on cash, the Tenderloin is a whirlpool. It sucks them in and then holds on, so successfully that this neighborhood is now the second most populous behind Chinatown. People like Bradford Paul say the population pressure in itself may be changing the Tenderloin for the better.
There's a lot of people here and a lot of activity, and it helps keep crime down. You're not going to get people doing drug dealing or just hassling people if there's a lot of witnesses around.
1 out of every 4 witnesses to what goes on in the Tenderloin is now a child, and the number grows every day. That fact may hold the most promise of all. Despite the problems of being a child of the Tenderloin, or raising one, the very presence of children is a softening influence, whether on the porno strip at Turk and Taylor or on Heroin Alley along Leavenworth. You can see it with Michelle Lefebvre in the morning on Ellis, or the beat cops in the evening on Turk. And you can hear it from people like Leon Griffin.
If I allow myself to be down and out around Ray Ray and Ronnie and Henry, then I don't have any type of example for them, you know. But yeah, I get that feeling sometimes, but I try to get out of myself into them, and that way that down and out feeling will leave, you know.
In the Tenderloin, I'm Greg Lyon, News Center 4.
And tomorrow, what is ahead for the children of the Tenderloin? And a look at what happens when city kids get a day in the country. By the way, Target 4's Lou Diaria shot and edited this report. For the past 2 nights, Target 4's Greg Lyon has been telling the story of children growing up in San Francisco's Tenderloin. Of necessity, much of that story has been a chronicle of the tough times in the city's most notorious neighborhood. Tonight, the final episode, and some reasons for hope for the children of the Tenderloin.
One of the youngest of the children of the Tenderloin lives in a studio apartment on Leavenworth. He is the first of his family to be born in America, and he carries their dreams in his name. His people are Tuk and Sokli, Pana and Buna and Chandara. But he is David Mark. David Mark Nee, 1 year old. 3 years ago, his family was here, the Sakao refugee camp in Thailand, across the border from their home in Cambodia. 3 years ago, they had as close to nothing as anyone can get while still remaining alive. 30% of the people in the Tenderloin come from backgrounds like this. Now, their children are learning America, partly through programs like this one, sponsored by the Central YMCA. And they bring with them special qualities, according to the wise Kathy Wolfheim.
Their families have already come through a war. They've seen horrible devastation of countryside, people killed. They've experienced a long escape route. They made it here. So they're on their way somewhere. They're survivors.
Survival among Southeast Asians is enhanced by their close-knit family structure. As David Mark grows, he can turn to 9 other people in the Nee family, including his mother, his grandmother, and his great-grandmother. The same cannot be said for all of the Tenderloin's children. For some, family support is stretched to the breaking point. The boy is the child of a single working mother. She is lucky enough to have friends caring for him on this night. Without them, she couldn't work. She and he are the pattern of the Tenderloin.
Most of the American families that are here are single-parent families. And many of the mothers are struggling hard, working an evening job at a restaurant or something, just trying to make enough money to get by, or they're living on welfare, making it on their welfare checks.
It is part of the story of the Tenderloin that every other person, including the Southeast Asians, is receiving some form of government assistance. But there are other stories, like that of Joseph Booth at the airport or bus terminal.
I got to Steve. I say, need taxi, and they say yes, and I help them. I say, I put my hand like that, and the taxi come. I help him put the luggage inside.
At the tender age of 8, Joseph Booth is something of a legend in the neighborhood. B. Stevenson knows him.
But he makes enough money, he came and told me, I made enough money to take my mother out to McDonald's to dinner. Hey, that's a big thing, huh? How many times do you get a chance to take your mother out to dinner and what are you, 7 or 8 years old, 10 years old? Not often. Here's a little boy who lives in Tenderloin, he's going to be something.
B. Stevenson's own son, Joe, is another Tenderloin story. He's working this summer with the YMCA, helping the children of refugees. There's another story in David Mark Nee's family, where his uncle, Chandara, only 3 years in the United States, graduated from Mission High School in the Honors Society.
Congratulations.
There is the promise of a dozen stories in the eyes of Tenderloin children on an overnight camping trip with the YMCA, away from the concrete canyons and the pictures of despair that are all too easy for children to see. It's the promise that keeps people like Kathy Wolfheim going.
I feel that the reasons that they're here in the Tenderloin are tragic. But I feel like kids generate a lot of hope just by being the children that they are.
In the Tenderloin, I'm Greg Lyon, News Center 4.
One piece of news from the Tenderloin. 3 weeks ago, crews began working on what will be the first park for children in that neighborhood. It is scheduled to be completed sometime this winter. The cameraman and editor for this series was Target 4's Lou Diaria. Lou and Greg are to be commended.
You said it. Fine report. Speaking of the Tenderloin, a man who risked his own life to save 8 people in a Tenderloin hotel fire.